Avram Davidson was an American writer of fantasy fiction, science fiction, and crime fiction, as well as the author of many stories that do not fit into a genre niche. He won a Hugo Award and 3 World Fantasy Awards in the science fiction and fantasy genre, a World Fantasy Life Achievement Award, and an Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine Short Story Award and an Edgar Award in the mystery genre. Davidson edited the magazine of fantasy and science fiction from 1962 to 1964. His last novel, The Boss in the Wall, a treatise on the house devil, was completed by Grania Davis and was a Nebula Award finalist in 1998. The Encyclopedia of Science Fiction says he is, perhaps SF's most explicitly literary author. Fiction and articles. Davidson wrote many stories for fiction magazines beginning in the 1950s. After publishing his first fiction in Commentary and other Jewish intellectual magazines, Davidson was active in science fiction fandom from his teens. His best-known works are his novels about Virgil Magus, the magician, that medieval legend made out of the Roman poet Virgil, the Peregrine novels, a comic view of Europe shortly after the fall of Rome, the Jack Limekiller stories, about Canadian living in an imaginary Central American country modeled after Belize during the 1960s, and the stories of Dr. He, a sort of even more erudite Sherlock Holmesian figure living in the mythical city of Pannonia Transbalkania, the waning fourth largest empire in Europe. Lesser known and uncollected during his lifetime are his mystery stories, which were assembled after his death as the investigations of Avram Davidson. These mystery stories frequently have a historical setting, and are intricately plotted. In addition, Davidson ghosted 2 Ellery Queen mysteries, and On the Eighth Day and The Fourth Side of the Triangle, and a true crime collection, Crimes and Chaos. Other noteworthy works are his collaborations. Enjoylig, a folly, written in collaboration with Ward Moore, a veteran of the American Revolutionary War, is found alive and very well in the Tennessee backwoods, having survived over the centuries by daily soaks in whiskey of his own making to hilariously face the world of the 1960s. In Marco Polo and the Sleeping Beauty, co-written with Grania Davis, the background of Marco Polo's travels in the Mongol Empire is borrowed for an original story. After Davidson's death, Grania Davis also finished The Boss in the Wall, a claustrophobic horror novel that bears little resemblance to the work of any other writer. Davidson also read dozens of short stories that defy classification, and the adventures in unhistory essays, which delve into puzzles such as the identity of Prester John and suggest solutions to them. His earlier historical essays were scrupulously researched, even when published by magazines just as happy to offer fiction as fact. Later essays were handicapped by a lack of resources in the libraries of the small towns where Davidson lived in the pre-internet era, but are enlivened by the style and bold speculation. Davidson's work is marked by a strong interest in history, with his plots often turning on what at first might seem like minor events. His characterization is also unusually in-depth for fantasy, and is often enriched by his ear for unusual accents and his apparently endless ability to give each character his or her own characteristics of speech. However, Davidson's most obvious characteristics are his plotting and style. Very little may happen in a Davidson story, but he enjoyed describing it in enormous detail. Hidden among the detail are facts or omissions that at the end of the story later prove to be the pebbles that start avalanches of major consequences. Especially in his later works, Davidson came to delight in deliberately including many elements that beginning writers are told to avoid. such as page-long sentences with half a dozen colons and semicolons, or an irrelevant digression in the opening pages of a story. These touches often succeed through the sheer boldness, as well as the comedy that runs through many of his most ambitious works. In general, Davidson's attitude to his readers is similar to that of 19th-century authors. He assumes that his readers are there to be amused, and will follow him wherever he happens to go. Biography. Davidson was born in 1923 in Yonkers, New York. He served as a Navy hospital corpsman with the Marine Corps in the Pacific during World War II, and began his writing career as a Talmudic scholar around 1950. This made his study of and conversion to Tenrikyo in the 1970s rather surprising, although he had a reputation for being quick to anger when anyone tampered with his work or misunderstood it. Davidson was also greatly in demand as a storyteller, and well known among his friends for his extreme generosity. He was a member of the Swordsman and Sorcerers Guild of America, a loose-knit group of heroic fantasy authors founded in the 1960s, some of whose works were anthologized in Link Carter's Flashing Swords anthologies. While editing the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, he lived in Mexico, and later in British Honduras. He lived in a rural district of Novato, in northern Marin County, California, in 1970, but later moved closer to San Francisco. He lived in a small house in Sausalito, at the southern end of Marin County next to San Francisco in 1971 and 1972, and it was the fans and friends were affectionately welcomed. In his later years, he lived in Washington state, including a brief stay in the Veterans Home in Bremerton. He died in his tiny apartment in Bremerton on May 8, 1993, aged 70. A memorial service was held in Gasworks Park in Seattle. He was survived by his son Ethan and his ex-wife Grania Davis, who continues to edit and release his unpublished works. Books. Dr.He series. The Adventures of Dr.He, Owlsworth Press, 1990, includes all but one of the published Dr.He stories. The Old Bird, in the other 19th-century Limekiller series. Limekiller Old Earth Books, 2003, includes all of the published Limekiller stories. Virgil Mega-series fantasy series set an alternate ancient Mediterranean world where harpies, basilisks, and satyrs coexist with Rome, Carthage, and the Punic Wars. The Phoenix and the Mirror, Doubleday, 1969, the first Virgil Magus novel. Virgil in Averno, Doubleday, 1987, the second Virgil Magus novel. The Scarlet Fig, or Slowly Through a Land of Stone, Rose Press, 2005. The third Virgil Magus novel, The Other Magus, in Edges, edited by Ursula K. Virgil and the Ducos, Hic Inclusus Vitimperdet, or The Imitations of the King, Asimov's, September 1997, pp. Virgil Magus, King Without Country, with Michael Swanwick, Asimov's, July 1998 Peregrine series. Peregrine, Secundus, Barclay paperback, 1981 novels. Rourke, Ursus of Ultima Thule, Avon paperback, 1973 with Grania Davis, Marco Polo and the Sleeping Beauty, Bayern Books paperback, 1987 with Wardmore, Joylig, A Folly, Pyramid paperback, 1962 collections. The Other 19th Century, Tor, 2001 Ellery Queen Books, the novels written based on outlines by Frederick Dane, one of the cousins who created Ellery Queen.